Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to have the man from Destination Circle, the Don. It's Don Welsh, and good afternoon, Don.
Graham, always great to be with you. Honored to be in your presence.
I like a note of sarcasm in these meetings. That's excellent. Don, it's been a fantastic conference, and you must be very proud of what you and your colleagues have done. The number of people who've been here. And the messaging coming out, it's all very positive about destination stewardship and the move towards that as opposed to purely destination marketing. Is that something that you've been thinking about for some time?
I think great question, and I really do think that it is evolved, and it evolved when we came out of the pandemic. And I think you probably knew going into 2019, 2020, certain destinations around the world hit all-time highs in terms of visitation. And there was some backlash in the local cities and regions about that, what they perceived as over-tourism. And in many cases, it was. So I think then we went from having over-tourism to no tourism for a period of time with the pandemic globally. And as we began coming out, there are certain destinations, certain cities around the world that had a strategic growth to getting back to maybe where they were pre-pandemic. There were certain destinations in the world, and you know many of them, they had a meteoric rise because either that's where the airlines put service back into, or they were drive markets. And there was not consistency in terms of city by city, state by state, country by country, as you know, as they opened. So when people had limited options, it put people in a forceful way into a destination. I know in Hawaii, they probably went back to pre-pandemic levels that were already a high, and I think even surpassed them. So I think it really began the discussion that your brand had to align with the community value, because I think the one thing we all have the great fortune of representing is the destination we live and we work in. And I think in order for a brand to be true and resonate well with leisure tourists, business travelers, certainly meeting planners, it has to be true to the values of that community. So when we start talking about, I think, stewardship, it's a litany of issues. But I think it goes back to a couple things: being authentic to what your city and your brand is, and also then aligning that to the community desires and wants and needs. And when those things come together, I think there's a feeling that it's not just the tourism industry, hotels, restaurants, attractions, but there's a conscious effort going on into the neighborhoods and the people that live and work in those communities that are not in our industry.
Have you found, it's a powerful organization. You have some very powerful friends in the travel and tourism industry throughout North America. Do you get any kickback from that, the policy line you're taking?
No, I think some are really at the forefront of this type of thinking. Some are at the beginning stages of their journey. But here's the one thing: I think every destination, whether they're a two-person operation in a smaller destination, it's resonating in terms of their responsibilities to be a responsible steward for their brand. So I'm really happy. I think one of the things that's becoming apparent with DI is by having now global membership, we can exchange best ideas. So by our U.S. and Canadian, our North American partners, I know a lot of great sustainable work has already been done over the years in Europe. And we can begin exchanging information like that, where rather than having to go back to square one, and there's certain things that are taking place really well in Canada and the US and Mexico that can travel across the ocean. So and you've seen that here. And I think some of the cross-pollination of some of these critical issues are really paramount to continue to address.
That's very admirable, because it requires strong leadership to carry on down that line. I'm sure in the face of some people thinking, we've just got to drive for the bottom line every time. So more power to your elbow on that one.
Yeah, I think right now, if it's another great point, as I start thinking about, and I've said this over the last couple of years, if you probably look back at the history of successful DMOs, convention bureaus, whatever you want to call them, probably the people that ran those had a pretty strong sales and marketing background. And to some degree, they may have come from government, right? And I think if you looked at those skill sets and you could read a balance sheet, you probably had a pretty good chance to be successful. I think the complexities of the jobs now, of the people that run destinations, again, both big and small, has never been more responsible. But they have to have an understanding clearly of financials. They have to have an understanding of who their key stakeholders are. understanding that the most critical audience they need to do is convince and convey the importance of what tourism means to their elected leaders. And that's a challenge because, they're always cycling in and out. So we were talking about this morning, one of the sessions, not everybody knows what a healthy tourism economy means if they are elected as a mayor or a governor. And there's a lot of education taking place. And I think the people that are in these senior jobs now, not just CEOs, you have to have a really alignment with the community values that we talked about.
Sure. And that's never more evident than here in Tampa, where Santiago is obviously very close with the governor, with the mayor and the local community. I mean, that's evident from when you walk around, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always said that when this triangle gets connected between the destination organization and the civic community, the people that live and work in a community that aren't tied to what we do, and then when your elected leadership supports it, and then, of course, the tourism industry, when that triangle is connected, magic happens. I've also walked into communities where there is a piece of that that's not missing that will inhibit that city from probably achieving what its goals are.
Sure. Last question. Do you think that Destination International has a role to play in the PR of travel and tourism, which generally and globally at the moment is not very high? But even go back in history, it's never been particularly good. When you consider the good that it does, not only economically, but socially, and as you mentioned, the museum that's down the road is not just for tourists, it's for citizens. The restaurants and the variety of them offer citizens as well as visitors. Do you think we need to do a better job as an industry?
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's why, to be honest with you, I'm thrilled that you took the time out of your schedule to be here in Tampa, Florida with other journalists from around the world, because I think we have done a poor job to talk exactly about those things that are important to communities. I think everybody understands, not everyone, but I think somehow we need to do a better job of educating the people in the community, not only the economic impact, but the job creation. And many people also, we used to publish a report in Chicago when I was there that showed the direct impact, what it meant for your annual taxes. Had it not been for tourism, your tax would have been probably X% higher. Yeah. So that was almost like a report card. But I think now it's a little bit deeper. We're living in some troubling times. And I think right now, I've said this often, and I do believe travel's never been more important. I can't wait to go into Ukraine when it's safe to go in there and help them get their tourism economy back. So I think it touches on a lot of humanistic elements, and that is that when people go somewhere, I think they're hopefully changed for the better. We had Arthur Brooks yesterday talking about happiness, and happiness to a lot of people is travel and what it means to them, not just going to a place, but coming back and being wiser of how that community operates. So yeah, but I do think right now having responsible journalistic reporting on, and again, it can never be perfect, is going to be honest. But I do think right now there's so many good success stories. If you look at a meeting, an event that takes place in the community, I had the privilege of working in Chicago, and every year the American Society of Clinical Oncologists would come in, and they would leave Chicago publishing no less than 50 studies that were advancing the treatment of cancer. And did we ever talk about that for the first couple of years in Chicago to the people that live there? No, but we did it towards the end. And we talked about that not only did these 50,000 people come into the city and they spent X and they did this, but this is what they've left behind for society. And those kind of meetings are taking place every day. So yeah, I'm a big believer that we need to somehow find the good rather than always maybe the negative side.
Thank you very much for your time, Don.
Thank you, Grant.